Hello, and welcome to this week's Movie Math, where forget Dementis, Furiosa is just hoping she can beat Garfield. What is happening? Yes, welcome to a particularly sobering Movie Math. The industry is, they're panicking, but they're also sticking their head in the sand. Everybody wants to blame somebody else, or they're saying it's only a momentary hiccup, but I think it's more than a hiccup, and I think that the sooner the industry wakes up and realizes they have a real problem, hopefully the faster they can fix it. And IATSE, by the way, is on the verge of going on a strike. If they go on a strike, it won't kill the entertainment industry. It won't kill Hollywood, but it could take as long as 5 years to recover. That would just be catastrophic for the business. So I would think that therefore IATSE could get anything they wanted, because the studios would realize they simply cannot allow another strike to happen. But that does not seem to be the case. We'll see. I think it's absolutely unbelievable that there's even a possibility that IATSE is going to go on strike. But there seems to be a possibility. I'm very curious to hear your own thoughts down below, because I know a lot of you, and it's what's fascinating is that so many of you have different takes on this. Some of you want Hollywood to burn. Some of you have AMC theaters stock. So I'm very curious to see your thoughts down below. So yes, both movies are locked in a photo finish that might not be resolved until Tuesday. Because remember, it's a 4-day holiday weekend. But Garfield is surging after Friday. Furiosa won Friday, but Garfield is doing very well after that, because it's drawing in families for the holiday weekend and therefore has very strong matinees. People are seeing Garfield all day long. Not so much with Furiosa. It's close, as I said, a photo finish. And surging might be a strong word to use, because both films, once thought to have a shot, each have a shot at maybe 50 million. Well, now they're looking at around 31 million for the 4-day. The 4-day. Oh my God. 25 for the 3-day. That not only puts both films below IF's disappointing debut, but even below The Fall Guy, which kicked off this depressing summer movie season. Right now, Hollywood is just hoping for a movie, any movie, that can open at 100 million or more. As the Hollywood Reporter just pointed out, by now, we already should have had 2 or 3, maybe even 4. Maybe Inside Out. 2 will be the first 100 million opener of the year. I mean, that's on the high end of the predictions, though. We might have to wait all the way until the end of July for Deadpool and Wolverine. Hopefully. The trades are putting out panic-inducing headlines, yet telling the industry not to panic. It's time to panic, not to lose their heads. Well, maybe losing your head every once in a while is a good idea, because it makes you realize just how serious the situation is. Because this is bad. It's real bad. Kids, you might want to look away and perhaps dream about working in a different industry. Too bleak? I don't think so. This weekend, I was talking to a friend of mine in the industry who's working there right now, who told me there was concern Hollywood could go the way of Detroit. Oh, listen to this. It wasn't funny, because I think it made a lot of sense. So Detroit was a once bustling business town that saw mass consolidation down to just a big 3, with the city now a former shell of its glory days. Sound familiar? Or how about Pittsburgh, once the crown jewel of the global steel industry? And now, it was hit hard by the loss of steel. I think some steel companies are still based there. But then also, I've been there recently, post-pandemic. The pandemic absolutely gutted that city. So anyway, my friend in the industry also suggested it might be time to fully repeal the laws that keep studios from owning movie theaters. In the past, it was thought it would give them too much control of an industry. But to be fair, those laws have already started to be loosened. But I think the reasoning that my friend had, which I agree with, is that if the studio owns the theater itself, therefore they would keep all of the ticket revenue instead of having to give a substantial portion of it. Remember, it works out to about 50% to a third party. And therefore, maybe they'd be less incentivized to push the movie to digital, where those distributors take a fraction of what theater owners do. So that's another incentive for a studio which is not seeing strong box office returns to push to digital, where they get a bigger cut of almost the entire pie. So, I mean, it would suck for movie theater owners, but I don't really think they're doing a very good job protecting their business because I think the theater experience is real bad these days. It's really, really bad. We're going to talk about that a little bit more. But also, don't worry, we're going to talk about the quality of films, too. So The Fall Guy hit digital. Oh, by the way, I think that if studios own movie theaters, hopefully they would work hard to protect that experience. I mean, the theme parks are having some trouble, so we can maybe see some glimmer of what it would be like. But, the studios would come under, I think, heavy attack on social media if it wasn't a good experience. And also, they're showcasing their own product. So you would think they would take that hopefully very, very seriously. Maybe, because of society, the communal movie theater experience just cannot be done. It's very scary. I mean, there's a lot of things we can't do in a group anymore. It's become, dangerous and scary, like mass transportation. I think technology is further separating us so that that's what's making us lose the ability to have compassion. And I think politics is at play. Oh, it's real bad. All right, as society burns, is saving movie theaters really a top priority? All right. The Fall Guy hit digital in just 3 weeks. Shocking, everybody. Everybody was appalled. But the reason it hit hit digital in just 3 weeks is because it fizzled at the box office. Cinephiles and people in the industry immediately spoke out about how disgusting they thought it was that it took just 3 weeks for The Fall Guy to hit digital, and that Universal was responsible and had blood on their hands when it came to the theatrical business. But nobody knew the window for The Fall Guy, the theatrical window, would be so short when the movie came out, and yet they still didn't go. However, the problem now becomes is that a precedent has been set, potentially for other studios, but definitely for moviegoers who say, wow, look how fast The Fall Guy hit digital. If we don't go see these movies in theaters, maybe they'll hit digital quickly too. So I think, it's not so much, so The Fall Guy did what it had to do, but it might have undercut a lot of other movies' theatrical chances this summer season. Let's talk about Furiosa, which opened 20 million below its predecessor, which came out 9 years ago. So inflation is a major factor there as well. So you can't say that it's the Mad Max brand itself that's the issue. People paid to see it 9 years ago. When I put out this poll yesterday about why aren't you going to the movies, and really, as I said, movie theaters are doing an awful job providing a quality movie-going experience, some of you, again, including many of you who obviously own AMC stock, shot back, it's the quality of the films themselves. Thank you very much. And while I won't dismiss these other issues, I think they're a major problem. I am starting to agree with you that quality is also a major problem. I saw 3 movies over the past few days in a theater. And 1974's Young Frankenstein, playing at Netflix's Paris Theater here in New York City on a weeknight, it played on Wednesday night, was by far my best movie experience. And the best, not only because the movie was so good, but the movie-going experience, itself was the best. And you can't just say it was the theater, because I saw Hitman at the exact same theater just 2 days later, and let me tell you, not as well behaved an audience. It was crazy. Young Frankenstein wasn't just the better movie, but the audience for it was more excited. They cared more, and they were therefore more engaged. Nobody on their phone, whereas on Hitman, people were on their phones. It was weird. Some lady was practically lying down in her seat. Then she's playing with her hair, which therefore then got in everybody's view, because honestly, she seemed to think she was on her sofa. It was weird. All right, with Furiosa, as I said in my reviews, it definitely has its moments, but it's nowhere near as good as the first film. And so, I guess it's not the brand, but it is, George Miller still has culpability because he didn't deliver as good a movie. It's also an R-rated film. Now, R-rated films can do quite well. Deadpool and Wolverine is an R-rated film, and it's the 3rd Deadpool movie, the first 2 having done quite well. But on a holiday weekend, what is an R-rated movie doing coming out Memorial Day weekend? It has no business here, and therefore did no business here. Of course, a family movie is winning out. Fury Road opened the weekend before Memorial Day weekend, back in 2015. It was basically acting as counter-programming. Maybe that helped it as well. It was the surprise. It was, the palate cleanser. Whereas this time around, Furiosa was presented as the main course. The expected winner. And people said, no, I would prefer pizza and lasagna. But there's more. Furiosa is yet another female-led actioner where women did not show up. Oh my goodness, a whopping 72% of the audience for Furiosa was men. The Hollywood Reporter also put out a PR piece over the last few days. I think the only way to describe it is a PR piece because there's no evidence that any of these new movie stars can sell tickets. The only actor on this list who has been able to sell movie tickets for more than just one movie is Mr. Timothée Chalamet, who got a very nice Madame Tussauds wax figure the other day. One of the choice moments on the road to stardom. But will his upcoming Bob Dylan film break the spell? James Mangold also did Walk the Line, which was a huge hit, not only at the box office, but also awards season. But I don't know if Bob Dylan has the same broad appeal as Johnny Cash. I'm sure I upset a couple of Bob Dylan fans. But, really, I think when you're like, you want to go to a Johnny Cash concert? Everybody's like, woohoo, yes, I do. But I don't know if people today are as interested in, I don't know if Bob Dylan's the same kind of party. Freddie Mercury, Johnny Cash, those are parties. Movie stars are consistent. What do you think makes a movie star? We got to figure it out if we're going to make some more. I think consistency is key. Audiences need to feel that they can trust their choice of movie. No matter how the trailer looks or no matter what the marketing job is, I think the audience needs to feel, I trust that actor and the projects that they pick. I think that helped Tom Hanks, Denzel Washington, Leonardo DiCaprio, and almost every classic movie star. Today, a lot of movie stars, they want to do the one for them, one for me rule. But every time you do one for you, with a couple of rare exceptions, you lose a little bit of the audience's faith because they're like, we didn't like that. That's because we like the ones for us. So I think it's really tricky. Also, are today's younger actors, I saw somebody have this argument, which I thought had some merit. Perhaps younger actors are overexposed on social media. And also, perhaps Hollywood is mistaking popularity on social media for the ability to sell tickets. Just like back in the day, they used to mistake the ability to sell gossip magazines for the ability to sell tickets. A couple of actors got a lot of movies because they could sell gossip magazines. Angelina Jolie is kind of like that. In the right role, she's she was, very lucrative. She's people like her most as an action heroine. But she kept getting work because, she was really good at selling magazines, but not so much tickets outside of action movies. Now, I like Chris Hemsworth and Anya Taylor-Joy. Very talented, very likable, but that doesn't mean you can sell tickets. Hemsworth has really struggled at the box office outside of his Marvel work, like many Marvel stars. His most popular other piece of work is on Netflix, with those Extraction movies. Whew, those sure are good. I'm excited for Extraction 3. And speaking of Netflix, that's the only place that Anya Taylor-Joy has had a hit with The Queen's Gambit. She remains untested at the box office. Well, that's the nice way to put it. You might say she's not doing so well there. As for getting women into the theater, the movie might be called Furiosa, but she hardly has any lines. Part of that is because for about 50% of the movie, Furiosa is actually played by Alia Brown. Although you wouldn't know that from the trailer, although that headline about Anya Taylor-Joy having so few lines did come out right before the film's release. But I'm not sure how much damage that itself could have done. But otherwise, it's an almost entirely male cast. I talked to a female friend of mine about this, actually, who went to see Furiosa again with me. And we had a good time. We both agreed. Again, not as good as Fury Road. But, and we both agreed that in Furiosa, there really wasn't too much to sadly, the majority of action fans and comic book fans, as we've been discussing, are guys. There are a couple of us unicorns, us women, that go to see these movies and like genre fare, but it's overwhelmingly men. So, you got to work to get the women who don't like this stuff usually to come on over, right? They went to see Wonder Woman, the first one. That worked out. So they will support a female action hero under the right circumstances. And think about it. The original Wonder Woman did a brilliant job of balancing an action movie with a romance as well as an epic period film on top of all that, right? Remember, Alan Heinberg brilliantly modeled the first Wonder Woman movie after The Little Freaking Mermaid. It was genius. A little bit of Splash in there too. It was really, really smart. I can't believe they got rid of Alan Heinberg. Patty Jenkins, your ego. She got rid of Zack Snyder's stunt team. She got rid of Alan Heinberg because she wanted to prove she could do it herself. And then she couldn't do it herself and lost the whole franchise. Very, very unfortunate. Because we needed Wonder Woman. How do you think is a good way to get... And by the way, it's important. It would be great to get women in to see these movies, but not even a lot of guys went to see Furiosa. I mean, 72% of people who showed up. Anya Taylor-Joy, by the way, has Disney princess eyes, but clearly George Miller needed to do more than just cast her in the role, especially since he also did a lot to change the character's vibe so much. It really did in some ways feel like a different character. Clearly, though, if you want to entice female moviegoers to buy a ticket for a genre they don't usually have an interest in, you've got to find a way to interest them. But at the same time, not put off the male audience. It's this is why you get paid the big bucks to make these movies, because, it's tricky. It's hard to do, but you got to try and also do it in the first place. I don't think even the effort was made here. What would you have done? What do you think? Furiosa's audience scores for the people who showed up are solid, but that, again, doesn't change the fact that not a lot of people showed up. Over to Garfield. This movie is hardly a breakout animated hit, the kind we've gotten used to seeing, but it's probably break even for everyone involved. Sure, the box office is weak, and that Rotten Tomatoes critic score, ouch! But again, the audience scores here are solid. And just like with Furiosa, both movies have a shot, I think, at doing well on digital, particularly Garfield, because it's comfort food. It's pizza and lasagna. While Furiosa is the spicy meatball and might give you indigestion. And I told you, some of you were like, oh, Grace, what are you talking about? It's too graphic and, might be make people uncomfortable. All right. And while it's a bit of a speed bump for Chris Pratt, who's been on fire at the box office, if Garfield manages to open at number 1, once the dust settles, that'll be a very nice feather in Chris Pratt's hat. I think the fact that it's even so close at all makes him look good. And he's still a lucky rabbit's foot for projects. He argued, I don't think he actually has a deal to be both continue as Star-Lord and be in James Gunn's projects. I think Chris Pratt just wants to work. And so that's why he answered the question that way. I don't think that the studios would ever allow that to happen. I mean, I think James Gunn would take him if he was still Star-Lord because he knows, he wouldn't ask him to give up Star-Lord. But I'd be surprised if Kevin Feige would be all right with that. Unless he doesn't have big plans for Star-Lord, then go ahead. But if he wants to add Star-Lord to the Avengers, like many of us suspect, I don't think he's going to be okay with that. All right, both movies, back to Garfield and Furiosa. I put Garfield first. Both of these movies have this coming weekend to try and make up for their poor debuts. Because only Disney, speaking of Disney, only their Young Woman in the Sea is hitting theaters and not in wide release. There are a couple other very small movies as well, which we'll talk about at the end of the video. But then there's Bad Boys and The Watchers. Big question mark on the Bad Boys. We don't know how that's going to go because of the Will Smith situation. But then one of Disney's big guns, Pixar, is going to try and swoop in and save the summer movie season. And if they can't do it, or maybe it'll be a good 1-2 punch, then Marvel will take a shot at it. I saw a few Marvel fans say, everyone wanted to tear down the MCU, but you might have also torn down the whole industry's support beams. And you know what? There might have been no Marvel in Barbenheimer, and it certainly was not behind Super Mario Brothers, but Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 did a great job. Well, not a great job, but a very good job kicking off the 2023 summer movie season. It was a little low with its opening, but it had a good hold week to week, and it ended up doing very well. And you definitely felt like the summer movie season had started. We haven't gotten that feeling. We might never get that feeling, which is very scary. Maybe theaters should maybe try to have some kind of events or parties at their complex. They got it because Barbenheimer was very much a party, and I don't think we're gonna have maybe Deadpool and Wolverine. Ryan Reynolds is trying real hard. He put like these cool little prize boxes at the theater that just hit. I think maybe he's ramping up, but he's going to have to do even more than that. I still think it's stupid that movie comes out the weekend of Comic-Con. All right, anyway, and 3 of the top 10 films of 2023 were Marvel. So maybe there's a fair point there. I think Marvel fans might have a point. As for the rest of the top 10, this is how it's currently shaping up. If is looking at an okay 53% drop in its second weekend, but it's still probably not going to hit the century mark in theaters, domestic, and maybe not worldwide either. It should be on digital sooner rather than later. At least Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes has passed the century mark and the double century mark worldwide, closing in on the triple century mark. Woohoo! It's now Hollywood's 4th biggest hit of the year, surpassing Ghostbusters Frozen Empire. In its third weekend, it still fell just 51%, and many are predicting it won't hit digital until mid to late June, which will be about a month after release. But keep in mind, the traditional theatrical window used to be 3 months. I don't know if we can go back to that, but it seems like, I think I would like to go back to 3 months if you want to try and save the movie business, but the theatrical business. But This is very difficult. All right, and despite so many people would have to work together, it might not be doable. All right, and despite hitting digital this week, fans seem to have rallied behind The Fall Guy. Too little, too late. But I think protesting and hitting digital so quickly because it fell just 32% in its fourth week, its best hold yet. And then Angel Studios has tried again to launch a new faith-based film, yet still can't match its success with The Sound of Freedom last summer. Although these new movies are missing a key ingredient which helped that film, a massive conspiracy theory. These are just cute little sweet movies. Over on streaming, Fallout continues to be a massive hit for Amazon with its third week at number 1. I mean, the numbers have come down from extraordinary to just plain strong, but it's still number 1. That is incredible. Not only, again, as we've said, a win for original content, but also for the binge release model. This was the week of Shogun's finale, a weekly show, yet it still has not been able to make the overall chart. Should Fallout stay a binge with season 2 or transition to the weekly release model like Amazon's other hit shows when they hit their second seasons? I'd still argue for the weekly because now it's a big hit, right? Now it's been discovered by audiences. Let it enjoy that sweet, sweet weekly conversation. Because who at the end of the day is doing better, particularly in the world of streaming, where it's not about views, it's about attracting and keeping subscribers. So Shogun might not be on the overall chart. It might not ever make the overall chart, but it's got a lot more attention on social media and from the press thanks to that weekly release schedule. And as I said, in streaming, there are very different priorities. Also, there's award season where both Fallout and Shogun are expected to get a lot of Emmy nominations. And they're competing in the same category, which is so stupid because Fallout to me seems very much like a comedy. It's like the opposite of The Bear, which is in the comedy section, even though many of us feel it's a drama. It's crazy. I mean, I don't understand why the Academy doesn't step in, the Television Academy. Anyway, Shogun is expected to dominate when it comes to actual wins. And perhaps the weekly model helped it out a little bit there. As we expected, Baby Reindeer, another binge. That's the Netflix model. Although, again, they've started to do parts. That's their answer to trying to extend the conversation a little bit. But that surged in its second week on Nielsen because it blew up thanks to word of mouth, which takes a little bit of time to get going. And Anyone But You is the only movie in the overall top 10, having just hit Netflix thanks to their deal with Sony. I'm still not sold yet on Sydney Sweeney and Glenn Powell's movie stars yet. It might be more that it was a raunchy romantic comedy that came out just the right time, the holiday movie season, and then it had that dead period, January to February, to just keep playing. Wonka and many movies have benefited from that over the years. So it might be more the genre and the release strategy. So, but we'll see. I think the jury is still out on Sydney Sweeney and Glenn Powell. What do you think? Rebel Moon Part 2 is number 2 on the movies chart in its second week on Netflix, yet has not made the overall chart yet again. And is not even close to doing so, by the way. It's low. On the originals chart, Netflix's Dead Boy Detectives is surprisingly strong, which bodes well for a season 2 renewal. And Paramount Plus is flexing that IP with both Sonic and Star Trek shows in the top 10. Over on Netflix's own charts, it looks like people are done laughing at Madam Web. I guess it couldn't last forever. Did it last as long as the Morbius silliness? But perhaps it didn't last as long, but burned brighter. But it debuted on Netflix surprisingly soft, only able to rate number 2. But this was, it debuted in the middle of the week. This isn't a full week, so we'll see how it does on the next week chart. But Mother of the Bride, that's still number 1, and it's still very, very strong. It had a much bigger debut last week, just a couple of days, and it's still going strong. Brooke Shields, it's the Brooke Shields renaissance. Meanwhile, Unfrosted, no renaissance for Jerry Seinfeld, has fallen off considerably in its third week, almost out of the top 10. Then with shows, Bridgerton, with technically its 4th season, is still a massive hit for the streamer, topping the debut of the Queen Charlotte spinoff, yet a little bit below the debut of season 2, so it was right in the middle. This juggernaut, though, as you can see, blew everything else out of the water. Nothing else was able to come close. And it pulled the previous 2 seasons of Bridgerton back into the top 10. Whew! Baby Reindeer, still at number 3, 6th week on the Netflix charts. Wow, its next test will be the Emmys, where it's in the extremely competitive limited series category. Such a competitive category that Shogun got the heck out of there, not only to keep being a hit for Hulu, but it pretty much has the drama category all to itself, all sewn up. Kevin Hart continues to also be a big asset for Netflix with his own special in the top 10, along, of course, with being the host of that Tom Brady roast, also still here. Plus, anime series Blood of Zeus managed to crack the top 10 in its first full week on Netflix's charts. Then with iTunes, The Fall Guy might have just hit digital on Tuesday, but it's already lost the number one spot to Civil War, which dropped on Friday. The Fall Guy ain't got any kind of luck. Sure enough, I mean, a couple of you are really defending it, but I think the hard truth is that most people just don't like or care about that movie. Sure enough, the top 10 here is full enough of recent theatrical releases. I mean, this is where people are seeing new movies. Although Poor Abigail can't make it. It was briefly in the top 10, but it's out of there already. While Ungentlemanly Warfare, which has had the same release schedule, they came out at the same time. They both hit digital about the same time. That's still number 5. What is undercutting Abigail? It's a very good vampire flick. As for this coming weekend, Daisy Ridley reteams with Disney before she returns as Rey for Young Woman and the Sea. I'm actually kind of excited for her to return as Rey. I don't think she ever got a really fair shot at the role. So yeah, she'll be in Young Woman and the Sea, and there's also smaller films, Ezra and Summer Camp, none of which, again, are in super wide release. So this is, it's basically a second weekend for Furiosa and Garfield to really try and make up for lost ground. On digital, if they can do it. On digital Tuesday, Boy Kills World hits after being delayed a week, along with the Unsung Hero and also The First Omen on digital, not their respective streaming services. But as for streaming films, on Thursday, speaking of Kevin Hart, he is busy. Die Hard 2, and it doesn't seem to hurt any of his projects. Kevin Hart never seems to get suffer from being overexposed. He's built up a very loyal and strong audience. We'll see maybe Die Hard 2 is the step too far as it hits Prime Video. While on Friday, Disney Plus releases its Jim Henson documentary, which is crazy timing because when it comes to shows, the day before on Netflix, they're dropping Eric with Benedict Cumberbatch, where he plays a character very similar, a puppeteer very much like Jim Henson. And it takes place in that same time period when Jim Henson came about. Although Eric is a very dark show. I'm going to review it. I saw the whole thing and I'll be reviewing it later this week before it drops. And Netflix also, by the way, has Geek Girl, while Prime Video has The Outlaws Season 3 on Friday. Why are things so slow this week? I guess people feel the rest of May is lost because it was an earlier than usual Memorial Day weekend. Weird. It's like all of the industry forgot to program the last week of May because of Memorial Day weekend coming earlier. But that's this week's movie math. What have you been watching? What do you plan to watch? And what would be your plan to save the movie theater business? And this is important because some of you might be typing right now, why do we need to save it? Well, you've seen the Nielsen charts. Movies don't do nearly as well on streaming. Streaming is all about shows, those 6 to 8 hour movies, while the theatrical business is about movies themselves. So if movie theaters die out, so will probably movies themselves. And that would be a horrible loss for art. I mean, and it would be really bad. So we got to save them. All right, share those thoughts down below. Subscribe today. And of course, as always, you can check out some more videos right now.